It's like tradition.
Yeah, but
What's up, YouTube?
What's up?
I'm sitting in Ryan's seat, so somebody's got to take care of the live stream while he's gone. So I've got Jen and I today, and we are talking. If you didn't look at the thumbnail and the title, can you make money growing corals? She can. She's got a really successful story. So you'll hear about our journey in growing corals, selling corals. I used to, sling corals around, and now I don't. She used to sling corals around and still does, and is actually continually growing. So you'll hear about that today. What kind of our share our history of where we came from selling corals. Find out if it's actually viable. And the one thing that you said earlier today before we started is $1 million, $1 billion?
Oh, yeah. The only way you're going to be a millionaire in this industry is if you start off as a billionaire.
And we've got comments, this hobby is always a reverse cash flow for me. And so that's kind of the sentiment. So we wanted to find out if you can actually make money selling corals. And right up front, the answer is actually yes,
Agreed.
You can. And it's just to what degree are you looking for? Are you looking to quit your job and do it full time, which means a whole lot of effort?
Yep.
Or are you just looking to at least, cover salt costs for the month or what have you too? So we got some secrets that her and I have learned. She's probably got a lot more because she's got a full LFS. But we're just going to kind of talk about that, and then we'll get your guys' comments. Hey, comment in there if you guys are selling corals, and I've seen a couple that are like, yeah, it works for me. Share some comments, share some of your stories. We'll put them up here at the end, but get it started. All right. So, can you make money selling corals? Can it be profitable? For me, my goal was not to make a whole ton of money. I just wanted gear to set up more fish tanks, and I wanted salt because I was spending a lot of money on salt. And then, maybe spend some money on some corals, different types of corals here and there. But actually, I never really did buy a bunch. I'll tell you here in a second, I think I bought one expensive frag pack a long time ago, thinking that I was going to flip
Make it
those.
rich.
Oh yeah, flip those. Hey, if you spend $1,500 on corals, you can turn that into
$10,000.
Yeah, it didn't work that way. It didn't work that way. But for my start, so I first got into the hobby. I got my tank up and running, and I realized real fast that I can grow corals. Look, this is working.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, so if I can grow corals, and I'm going to the local fish stores and I'm buying these little chunks, I just grew this coral out from a little chunk to this big, giant, softball-sized colony. If I think about how much I paid for that little chunk, $5-10, this thing's worth like $200, $300, $400.
Yeah.
Oh man, all right, wheels start turning. All right, I'm gonna frag some of these things up, and we're gonna start going. So I went. The motivation for me, I got into my buddy's garage, and he's a kind of Thai. He's the one that got me into the hobby and whatnot. And he goes, he's got every tank every size tank you could imagine on these different shelves, all this other stuff, and frag racks top to bottom, and grow out systems, and big giant 90 wave tanks, and all this. And I was like, man, I could set up more tanks in my house.
Yeah.
So let's try it. And I found 40 breeders. I went out and skimmed the bare bottom, looking at Craigslist, Facebook, anything. Now, actually, Facebook Marketplace wasn't a thing back then. But looking at Craigslist and talking to some local reefers, and okay, first thing I need is tanks. Then I need some pumps. Then I need some salt. Then I need some lights, and doing all this other stuff. And next thing I know, I've got multiple tank syndrome in my basement. But I'm growing some corals out there, and I was constantly found myself fragging my display. So, my display was not elaborate. The 160, that is worth fragging out making frags and all this other stuff, and actually trying to, maybe sling a little, trade a little, make some little money. But I was just getting frags big enough to where they grew off a branch.
And you're like, oh, gotta
get
it.
Oh, that one's ready to go.
I need that $20.
And then I was like, oh, well, I wonder why these things aren't growing very well. It was because I kept chopping them.
Yep.
But we used to load up a cooler with we'd go on the local forums. It was, I can't remember what the name of the forum was down in Kansas. Somebody will correct me. But we're down in Kansas, and he would frag up a whole bunch of his stuff. I'd frag a whole bunch of mine. And then 2 weeks later, we'd glue them, we'd let them heal, we'd make sure they're doing good. And then 2 weeks later, we'd head off to the big city, Kansas City, and we'd make a list. We'd put out ads about a week before and say, hey, we're in town on this day. We can find places to meet you. We had a map drawn around all of Kansas City in the greater area. We're like, all right, we have to start here at 10, then we got to be there at 11, then we got to be here at a certain time, we got to be here at a certain time. And we're meeting all these people and slinging little bags. We're meeting in like church parking lots, grocery store parking lots. From a side, if you were an outside looking in, trading little bags and passing cash around. Like, no, I promise. It's just coral. It's live animals in bags. But then we had a local fish store too that would, we're going to Kansas City with about 1,000 some frags, maybe 500 to 1,000 frags. So we had coolers developed with different racks and storage system where the whole back of the car was filled with coolers and towels and all kinds of stuff. And we'd fill them up with salt water. We'd make our rounds and we'd go to the local fish store and we just dump like 200 frags into his system. And he just give us store credit for it. And that was, what I said, hey, I need a couple boxes of Instant Ocean. You got some used skimmers because I need a skimmer and I'm not going to buy a brand new one. You got some used lights somewhere because I'm going to do that too. But, for a while I actually felt like I was making money on it. And then I got big eyes. And I bought a $1,500 frag pack from Rocky Mountain Frags. He's got some gorgeous looking sticks if you ever get to check him out. But I bought like 5 corals, 5 little sticks, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna invest $1,500. Don't even have $1,500 to invest in it, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And then I'm gonna grow these things out, and then I'm going to make $50 a frag or something like that. I killed them. Well, life happened. So the tank kind of took a dive, and then that tank life balance kind of took a dive, and I watched my $1,500 investment turn into nothing. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this coral frag and selling business isn't for me. And I just lost interest in it. And there was a lot of logistics. And thinking back to it, like, did I make enough money to cover the 2 hours worth of gas? Did I make enough money to cover the electric? Did I make enough money for salt, for water production, for food?
Electricity?
Oh, yeah, all of that stuff. No, I was still losing money, but I wasn't losing as much money.
That's fair.
Because I was getting, gear and salt and stuff more or less for free. So it was kind of in the end, it was probably a wash. But
it was fun.
Oh, it was a great time.
And then you got to meet new people and trade new things. And
well, and that was the biggest part. Is okay. So how many times can you bring 50 frags of GSP
and the same thing?
Orange Monty caps. I used to grow orange Monty cap like a weed, and then I'd frag them up. Nobody would buy them for $5-10 a piece. So then I'd just get big giant ones, and I'm like, all right, I'll sell that one for $20 and maybe a couple biters. Yeah. But once you saturate the local market with all those frags, it's time to start finding something new.
Yep.
And that's why we'd go to the local fish store, we'd trade for some new ones, or you find the local club and you trade for some, like here you can have 6 frags of this thing. I don't care, I don't want it. I'm filled to the brim with it, but I do need one of those chalices, or I do need that strain of acan or what have you. And then I'll grow that out. And luckily, I've got a used saw and everything too, so I was really able to chop some stuff down. But in the end, I lost interest in it, and it wasn't going to be a moneymaker. But you, on the other hand, turned it into a thriving business.
Well, I had a little bit different starting point. I had the maintenance company, and I started 25 years ago. So people needed corals back then. There was no such thing as fragging. You just got a colony, which we had like 3 choices, GSP, zoanthids of some sort, and a euphilia, maybe a long tentacle plate, which you can't frag.
Were they getting shipped in from
like Vietnam?
So you never knew what kind of zoa rock you would get?
No. There was no such thing as a named zoa. They were all green, or like when Xenia and Thalia came out, I was like, whoa, wavy things. It was great. But nobody really fragged. And then when it started, then it was like, well, now I had all of these maintenance tanks that were full grown out.
Oh, yeah.
And so now it's like, well, what do I do with these? So we would cut them,
Yeah.
and then we have a name for it. We call it fragging it forward. And we also have Project Homegrown, which I can talk about too, but fragging it forward. So it's like for all the newbies and people that want like, bigger coral packs where we started. You know what I mean? Like you don't want, not everybody can do what I call bubblegum tanks too, where they invest $1,500 for all these teeny little, looks like little chewed up bubblegum all over. But not everybody can do that. They want a full reef to get started. And so then, we can offer those for really cheap.
Like bigger
colonies, of things that most people don't. So that's how kind of we got started. But I mean, I started with a room in my house, and then it was more of like, well, if I do this, it can support my energy costs, or like you convince that your significant other, like, well, no, this one's gonna really, if we do this, it's gonna pay for this and all of the other. So then I started with a room in my house, and then it was a separate section, and then I used to run it out of my garage.
Yeah.
But then I had to run water out there. So, I mean, by the time I paid for all of that, it was like, okay. Then I was like, okay, well, I have all of these beautiful corals, all these beautiful frags. It's time to bring it out. And that's where the store started.
And then you open the shop.
Yeah, and then we opened the store. But, I mean, now it's changed. Everything has changed so much as far as why you frag. But, I mean, most people still get into it to what I call, and I always say, to support your addiction.
Oh, yeah.
And to help out.
I think, I don't know, how many of you can raise your hands and say, this thought has not crossed your mind where, oh, I can make money on this, and I can actually buy more. I think that is one of the first thoughts that a lot of new reefers get into. I fell into that trap. I was like, the first thing I saw when I walked into my buddy's garage was money. Look, he can sell all these things. If he were to clear out shop right now, he'd be sitting on several grand.
Oh, yeah.
But it never works that way either.
No, and that's why I always like pick the corals that you really love, and then when they grow out, then do that. I mean, there's definitely ones that are more resaleable than other ones.
Yeah. Well, my mom got into that path too. It's like when she was talking about setting up a reef tank in Montana, she was like, well, we can do this, and then we can grow them out and actually sell them and stuff. It's like, yeah, you can. That's exactly what I did too. But it's a longer term thing. There's probably some bigger picture stuff there too. And I ran into that a long time ago. I said, okay, well, how big is the market in your area? Because Kansas City was pretty decent. Here in Minneapolis is pretty decent. Montana's got a few, but I don't know if you're going to be making more than salt money on it.
Right, and I used to call it pizza money. So yeah, I would just do it, it just seemed like free. Like I grew this, it was free somehow, magically. I didn't have to pay for salt, I didn't have to pay for anything. I liked my tank and whatever, so it's like, oh yes, this pizza's free.
Well, I think you should go, I encourage everybody to go down that path. Try fragging and selling some things. Get a feel for how much it's actually going to cost you in effort and time and coordination and all this other stuff. And then set some realistic expectations. Like, all right, so what's more valuable? Like trading corals with friends or LFSs just to get new variety in your tank? Actually setting up multiple tanks to grow the stuff out and then actually sell it for maybe you're just trying to get salt out of the deal. And at the end, that's all I was. Once I got all my gear and
salt
I had multiple
food, all your consumables.
Yeah, I said exactly. I need some filter socks this week. Maybe my protein skimmer kind of crapped the bed, so I need a new one of those. And as long as I got salt and water, everything else is well. Then like you said, that frag it forward type thing. This gets back to back before slinging corals was a big thing. I remember slightly, probably just before my time coming in the hobby, but way before that, like you said, when corals were first coming in, people, trading in forums and groups, and nobody would charge money for it. It was like, and then that's kind of like the guy that I came from, Ty, my mentor in the hobby. He would, like, no, just, hey, I've got extra of this, just take it. Hey, just make sure when you grow it out, send it to somebody else. Yeah, bring it back to me, grow it out at your place, bring it back to me. And we used to trade corals like that, so that way we always had crossover in case somebody would lose one. Bank tanks?
Not like bank money, but so if I lose mine, at least you have it so I can get it back. Because a lot of these things you can't get back anymore.
Oh yeah, well I got lucky and got some Hawkins Encanada back from WWC, but I had lost that colony for a long time. Or a purple bear or pearlberry, that's another one that I have a hard time trying to find.
I know Zach has a beautiful chalice that I bought from him I grew it out. He lost it. He bought it back from me. Then I lost it. Now he has it here. And I walk past it every day. I'm like, can I have a frag of that, please?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it does pay for itself. What did I have the cost of? You start factoring like the cost of plugs, and now on a run to Kansas City, I needed, 200 some frag plugs. Well, at $20 a 20 pack, or like $10-15 a 20 pack, or what have you. There's an actual cost associated with this that I have to put up front and make sure I get back so I can get more frag plugs. And so we started getting into the idea of like DIY plugs, and we'd go to the hardware store and find the right tile, and we'd use some cement with some oyster shells and some sand to make our own, and we'd cure them in the back of the toilet. And, you just leave them in there for months and constantly flushing, and it's just constantly curing the cement stuff. I don't know how that affected the water quality, having so many of those cement plugs in the tanks, but that was something that to divert some of the cost away from like buying it, and we weren't making enough money to open a store, but we were making enough money to get salt. In the end,
and you're just doing it. I mean, when I started it, it was just more fun.
Yeah.
You take. I mean, we're all in this hobby. We love it, and then we see things growing, especially now that we have all the right equipment. Back in my day, when I started, I mean, it was like the Berlin system with like one power head and a hang-on back teeny skimmer, and so you really couldn't grow acros or anything. But just having fun with it, and then being able to trade. But it has become bigger than that now because of the way things are with the world.
I think we need to get back to that. And there's still some groups out there, some local clubs that's join together and support each other and share. I don't know, I feel like there was a part of the hobby in some part that was like, everybody's going to try to make money, nobody's really sharing, and we might actually be getting kind of back to that, hey, I have this, or I broke a branch off of this, or even, I used to go to some club meetings and stuff down in Kansas City, and we'd go to everybody's different house, and you'd walk up and you'd see a big colony on their tank or what have you, and be like, man, I really wish I'd have that. Like, oh yeah, sure.
And just break it up.
Yeah, here you go. Go glue it somewhere.
Yeah, now they're like, oh, here, this is $500. Here you go, and you're like, oh no.
So if you're not trying to make a whole bunch of money off of it, frag it forward. I like that idea. Frag it forward. Yeah, share some stuff.
Yeah, we do it, especially for like new kids that are getting into the hobby, because that is the future of our hobby.
Yeah.
And so so they don't have to they want to spend $10 and feel like they got something that's not, or even. Yeah. I mean, $10 can't get you a lot anyway, but they feel like they're getting something, and then that's where you learn, and that's where you start.
Well, sharing frags with people, that's another. I mean, that's a main point to diversifying your coral portfolio, if you will. Like I said, I got people fed up with orange monty caps. I ended up, I couldn't even give the stuff away. Yeah. I had so many of them. I don't even know what to do. I just give them to the fish store. Like, I don't even need store credit for them. I just can't grow these things. I have so many of them. But then I'd go there and be like, oh, that's a nice rainbow money.
Yep.
Or even livestock trades, because there was dream fish that I wanted. There's a fish that I just couldn't afford and whatnot. So I bring some corals in and get some livestock out of the deal, and
everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. I mean, as a store owner too, I mean, we have what we call we have a couple different programs, but so when people bring things in, it's like a win-win.
Oh, I was going to ask you that too. It's on my notes here too. Do you let people bring in like frags and stuff?
Yes. So we call it Project Homegrown. And so we have separate sections where just homegrown, and now we have a separate area because, I mean, you do run the risk of everybody, when you're trading, you run that risk of bringing things in that you knew nothing about, even if it's your best friend, So we have a separate location for all that, but
that's smart.
But yeah, so then we call it just, I mean, it's not our dump all, but it's just our new stuff.
Yeah.
And then we monitor it there, and before it touches any of the systems. But yeah, it makes everybody happy, and it keeps people, like even the customers that brought their stuff, it's like, hey, that was mine. Hey, that was mine. And and they get excited about it.
That's pretty cool.
And I used to do that too.
What do you do? Do you give them store credit?
Yep, store credit.
Oh yeah.
Store credit, or we trade. A lot of it is, well, we have certain clients that are like I said, bank tankers.
Yeah.
So we have like a collaborative, a group that we bank tank with, and then when they bring it in, then generally we'd say, okay, like we would buy or split it or whatever it originally was, and then they would get something else to start growing out. So then you get all these beautiful varieties of things.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly there's certain things that you can't frag, that just, obviously
it's
that
you
just don't.
You lose it.
Right, you just don't frag. But there's certain things that always, or that for the last at least 10 years, are still really popular. Mm-hmm. Orange Monty might not be that one.
ATF in the house here is, and this is exactly it. Not only increases the variety in your own collection, but it increases the variety in stores too.
That's true.
Because I've been to some really small, local fish stores, and it's your regular corals, the same stuff that you kind of grew up with, and then if you open up, your doors to some program like this. There's people that go buy corals online or trade them like you didn't even know that coral was in town, and then they go trade them.
And there's there's tons of corals too that you can't get anymore. Yeah. Like I know that the prices of torches and hammers and all that have gone like skyrocketed.
Yeah.
But the older colonies are so much more healthy. I mean, they have no wild tissue anymore. So when people have those, I love trading for those because
they've already been in that
they've been in it forever, and they're generally pest free. They're ready to go. So I mean, that is awesome too. And even like trumpet corals, which everybody has.
Yeah. Colostrius.
But now. I mean, as a wholesaler, you get them, and they're super expensive for me to buy.
Yeah.
So it's actually cheaper for me to get them
from
locals, and then I can keep the prices way down.
That brings up a good point. So those are some of the kind of how about lessons learned? Some things that we've learned, and let's see if you agree with me on this, because I wrote this up, and you're doing it professionally. I'm not anymore. But all right. So how do you do it? If you are thinking about this, like how am I going to do it? If some of this, I think I'm going to make some money, make some new corals, get some salt. One of the first things I found was deciding where your market is, or size of the market, where it is, how to get in contact with them. And for me, it was the local clubs and forums. Most of them allow coral sales. I think a majority of them do. And then some, you go into your local fish stores, like we said, and you see what they don't have.
Yep.
And that opens up the doors for you to trade with the LFS and also with local people.
Yes.
Trade and sell too. But I also would say, like, on the big national forums, so Reef to Reef and nanoreefs.com and all these other big reefing forums, you can actually ship corals. You can a lot of people post their stuff on there, and then they ship them, so they've got shipping costs worked into it and everything. Because
that is not cheap.
No, shipping corals. No. Oh, you're getting into that too recently in your shop.
Yep.
But yeah, so first of all, figure out your market. So how big is the market in Minneapolis? Versus the market in Kansas City, versus the market in some northern little town in South Dakota, or somewhere around. You got to figure out how far are you willing to travel. For me, it was 2 hours. 2 hours to where the city was. That's as far as I'm going to travel.
Yep.
Because there's inherent costs with that too, but. Find the local fish club, and worst case, if you're in a place where, if I'm in, the corner reaches of Montana, knowing that I don't have a store within 5 or 6 hours, it's time. But I'm growing coral like crazy. It's time to start looking into some cheap shipping methods, or find a way to upsell a little bit to ship. But you can still do it. Yeah.
Yep. I think one of the things I've learned is, like, we all have the traditional stuff. And so I make what I do, like when I have all this extra stuff, or like my frag forward stuff, I make what I call the non-committal combo rock. So when you can't commit to one thing, you want a little bit of this and that, I put them all in one, and I sell them for like $45.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so then you could throw some mushrooms, some zinnia, just get everything started on there, which is, for me, and for the the reefer too, it's like, oh, that's like a little mini, like an ecosystem. You
Smorgasbord.
just plop it in there and go. And it's stuff so making things different too. Even Monty is like taking them and then just rearranging them so they have natural growth patterns and stuff, making things different. That's how you can take even what you have and make it a little bit different. And then you can, if you are selling it, it makes yours more attractive than somebody else's.
I also like the, so I mean, if you're in the forums, obviously you have to share pictures of the stuff you have, which makes Instagram like a really good platform for like places like Instagram, maybe Facebook, but Instagram is made for this photo sharing stuff. So if you're really getting into it, you start sharing the pictures, and then you can just direct people like, hey, I'm selling corals, I'm coming into town, I've got X amount of these frags, X amount of these are what they look like, check out my Instagram page. They're all on there, and you guys can put some orders in. Now, I'm talking like a very small local scale, like I had 240 breeders in my basement full of frag racks and corals, and then my big 125 display that I'm chopping out of. So I'm not doing this on a grand scale where I'm opening a garage or doing anything like that. But even then, it's like enough to get some salt, get some gear, and get some stuff like that. But we do this, we didn't have Instagram, but we do the same thing. We just send photos of, not WYSIWYG, but here's the different types of corals that we have. We've got about average of each one of these. And somebody go, I want one of those. And we'd also list out price. And that's another thing, too, is my next bullet here is pricing the corals. And prices got just insane on some. Well, and I'm not, okay, so there's two paths there's two lines of thought that I take on pricing. One is, I can go buy, I can find the generic stuff, your Setosas, your Monty Caps, maybe some bird's nest, all of these GSPs and all of these generic, for lack of a better term, like very common corals, and because they don't have like a super sexy name to them, then I always charged upward like $5, $10, maybe 15 or 20 depending on what it was and how big it was, but. Colostria, trumpet coral, I'd probably charge $5 a head. Duncans, I would charge like $5 to $10 a head, and I could chop off whatever amount that that everybody's asking for. I went into a couple of local fish stores, and I've seen some posts or some ads for people selling corals who were charging like $20, $30 a head for Colostria.
The thing is now though, to get those things. It's actually better to have people, like I said, have people bring them in, because to buy them, I mean, at a wholesale level, they're generally more expensive than what you were selling them for.
Well, it makes you wonder why the cost has gone up. Are more people trying to sell corals and make money on it, or are the suppliers, where they come from, native or naturally, do they have pressure on them so that they can't send much more?
It's a combination. It definitely is. I know that there's a lot of regulations with a lot of places shutting down Indonesia and in Australia now, and there's all these other groups coming in. However, I feel like in those areas there is some hierarchy of like, give me the best or this color, because originally a zoe was a zoe was a zoe, right? If it was pink or green or whatever, you buy the colony, it was $30. Didn't matter. Now it's like, well, this one is $30 a polyp, and now there's
names on them.
Exactly. Now this one is like the rainbow blah blah, and now it's $30 a polyp. So that's why we do the Project Homegrown, which we haven't. It's not in full effect, but have we put more time into that? But then it's like everybody's happy because we keep prices low.
It makes all those luxury name corals affordable.
It does, but then then the people that make the luxury name corals, it draws the price down, so then they get mad.
Oh well, Well, as long as I can see it like this. So like I will buy that super candy cane rainbow trachea something. Well, maybe not trachea because you can't frag it, but I will buy those.
You're a
those
Millie.
name
You're
brand.
a Millie sucker.
Oh, I do like Millies. She's got some gorgeous Millies. I need to go rob her store. But I'll buy them under these names and I'll grow them out. But years down the road, I forget what the hell the name was. And then I was like, well, I've just got this like rainbow colored Millie here. If you want it, I'll $15. I'll cut you off a decent chunk. So pricing, another way to do this successfully is pricing. The more you can get in bulk, so I'll get to my other point here in the next bullet, but the more, bulk you have, the less, tied to that price you feel, where, man, I really need $30 out of this thing. Well, if I've got 20 or 40 of them, $5. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Handshake and a $5 bill. We're good to go. So pricing is a big one. Depending on your again, back to the market, what are people willing to pay? I have the feeling that if I were to start this up now and the prices I used to charge people and I don't know, $10, I'd probably sling a whole lot of
You'd sell out right away, and then you try to rebuy it, and you'd be like, okay, now you'd have to go buy them back from the people you sold to.
I'm out. But how do you get, so how do you gain all of those, 20, 40, 60 frags of a certain thing? And this is the lesson that I learned from trying to frag out my display after it grew. Oh, it grew an inch, ready to cut that inch off. And this is something that we learned from WWC. I'm sure, with your maintenance tanks you learn. Let those things grow out.
Yeah,
Don't stop touching them.
And it's exponential too. So if it grows 1 inch, so next month it'll be 2, and then 4, and then 8, and you know what I mean? Not 1 and then cut it down, and then 1 and then cut it down to 1. Plus, you'd run the risk of that one time, that last one is just done.
And then you're out.
And you're out.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the 160 back here behind the camera, and it is prime for, all of them are big, giant mother colonies.
Beautiful.
I could go clip, I don't know, hundreds of frags out of that thing and not even notice that I trimmed it.
True.
And that's, especially from a display point of view, like if I would have let my display grow out to what the 160 is, then I feel less, there was times where I'm chopping corals in my tank and I'm like, oh man, now it's going back to bare,
it's
nothing,
ugly.
It looks ugly again. But when you let them grow out to massive mother colonies, you chop a whole bunch of branches off, didn't even know it happened.
And the coral doesn't care either. And then also you can get different shapes. Like sometimes
true.
I will cut certain acros in a certain way or nip them so that they'll actually branch out instead of just being like one dumb stick. Nobody likes that. And like we were talking about in our fragging video too, if you are making frags, nobody likes the SpongeBob square box frag. Like nobody, there's no favia or
straight square.
Yeah, just a straight square because it's like the way that it's cut, it takes forever to regrow into something pretty. And then that's why it looks like the bubble gum chewed up all over the tank.
So yes, mother colonies, have patience to grow them out. It will yield you more, probably 8 times to 10 times more corals because you're not constantly cutting them back. Another lesson I learned was get yourself multiple tank syndrome. Just embrace it.
I'm in it.
I know, I had so many dang tanks. But like I had my display, and so when you think about like, okay, I only have my display, I'm gonna let it grow out, and then I'm gonna frag them up. The problem is like, what do you do with all those frags? And if we were to spend a day clipping the 160, we would, some people put frag racks in their sump.
Oh God, we'd have to start a whole nother tank.
You have to start a whole new tank. Like there's no room for this. So planning for that ahead before you go down the I'm going to cut coral and sell it route. I actually just was looking at the website today, and we have, you can get systems on the cheap. I had 40 breeder, that'll get it done. Even 30 long. You don't need a whole lot of water
We don't necessarily
volume.
Want the height either. You want it to be,
wide,
so you can have the surface area, but then also making sure that the water quality in there is the same as your main tank. You can't have like, I'm just going to put a shop light over it because it needs the same lighting.
Well, that makes that brings up a good point of finding a bunch of small tanks because. A 75% water change on a small tank when I need to, just to keep the water fresh, easy. That just takes away a whole ton of gear that I need on my tank. I don't need a skimmer. I don't need a refugium. I don't need a whole elaborate type of filtration system.
And what some people do, and I've done it too for some of my customers, is they'll just plumb off a system from their main tank.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So then you don't have to buy all the extra gear. So then you just have the extra tank. That's where majority, I know I'm thinking of a specific client right now, and he's watching and he knows who I'm talking about. But I feel like we did that not because to make room, but it was his justification for getting more for new things.
That's actually a good point. If you're looking for a reason to get a new tank, you say that you're going to start growing corals?
It feels better to your significant other or the person that knows how much money I know that there's like this saying where it's like you always hope that, or you never want to like die before your spouse or whatever. So then they sell your tank for what you told them that you paid for it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh yeah, here, take this tank. It was like $100.
No, don't do that. It's more.
Yeah. So.
I was looking at that. So that's what I did. I went and Craigslist, and I went to the cheap Petco days, and I just buy up some tanks and then set them all up. And made it super easy for water changes to keep the water quality and clear and stuff like that. But I was just looking on our website today. We have these new advanced acrylics frag tanks. You can get an 8-inch tall frag tank for $180. $180. Okay, it's more expensive than a 40 breeder, but it's an all-in-one type system. So
you get the surface
skimming. You get all of it. Get all the benefits of it. Acrylic tanks are also. There's another thing I learned too, and actually I should implement this here. Is you don't. We're talking about selling corals on forums or going to your local fish store and selling frag swaps.
Yep.
There's so many people that bring their little frag system, set up a booth. Maybe you pay like a $10 booth fee for your local frag swap. That's what's good about getting one of these, these more professional looking frag systems.
And they're lighter generally.
And they're super light too. Like hauling a 40 breeder into a frag swap.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
And 40 gallons of water.
And 40 gallons of water. When you could get like this, advanced acrylics one, lift it in there, plug in your power heads, get a strip. They're great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm always thinking of it as a maintenance thing too. It's like, oh, this thing's heavy, and I got to drag all this water, and then just making it easy too.
So once you cross that path of setting up shop, and I don't know, there might be times you have to talk to your local fish store, because I would imagine that some might have, if you build a good working relationship with them, like, hey, let me just set up my booth for a day in here. It's a whole bunch of corals you probably already have.
When we've done that too, where we've done where people brought extra things. We've done it to raise money too, where a certain percentage of it goes. We've done it for one of the members of our community that passed away to help pay for certain things. So, I mean, there's a bunch of creative ways to do it too. Plus, then we allowed everybody to bring corals in, and then they got money, and then the rest of the money was so it just creative ways of doing it.
All right, so multiple tank syndrome, you're going to need to get that if you want to get this thing going. They will not have place to put the stuff. So get multiple tank syndrome, and it's not actually not that expensive. Really nice frag tanks from Advanced Acrylics. Another one here is, we already touched on it a little bit, but trade corals for new variety. Like, I don't need to sell all of these corals this time. I'll give you 5 red money caps for this one head of acan.
Yep.
And then I'll grow it out. Yep. Or this blasto with babies around it. I'll give you 6 money caps and a setosa.
Yeah, but that's why when you meet all these people, everyone kind of likes their things. Like, I like chalices a lot.
Yeah.
And I like flowy things, torches, hammers, ganies. So I would pick my ganies, and then when they grow out, or my chalices when they grow out, and then, and all of a sudden my husband will get a hankering for acants. Well, then I know somebody, so then I can trade back and forth for that, and then we can all be happy.
Yeah. I don't think, I don't know. One of the things I thought of, because I learned it the hard way about how to frag properly. And, that's another point. If you're going to be doing this and gluing a whole bunch and doing all this other stuff and cutting, higher survival rate means higher success.
Yes.
More profit, right? So you really need to learn the ropes on cutting. And for me, there's some corals I'd never touch. I didn't know, one, because I didn't have the proper tools, but like a gani, I wouldn't try cutting that thing because, one, I've already had experience where they're sensitive, and I've killed a couple of them before. I don't trust myself cutting it, any other way with unless I had a saw, and I didn't. If you can find yourself a saw, used saw, or anything like that, pick that thing up because it will be a saving grace.
And then practice too if you do that, because I know when I first started, it was scary. You're like, okay, what am I doing here? And then it always seems, it never fails. it's like the coral knows that it's expensive.
Yeah.
The minute you frag, it's like, I'm dead.
Dead.
You know what I mean? Like, I have mushrooms that I could literally dry out for a day and, dry the rock, I'll put it back in. But then I look at my bounce wrong and it just nukes. It's like, what? That you were $800 and now you're dead. And now I have 8,000 of these that I can't give away.
Well, and another note I have here too is not only just variety, and we kind of, a little touched on it on mother colonies, but one of the things that Ryan says all the time is, if you really want to turn this thing into money, sell big giant pieces.
Yep.
Like, be willing to part with a big giant piece, but the cost that you can get for that thing, probably way more and that's kind of reverse. It's a reverse way of thinking for me of how it's a reverse way of thinking. So when I first started fragging, is I've got this big colony.
I'm gonna cut
I
it
can
into
chop it. Look at each one of those little pieces are worth $10. This is $3,000. And then when you're in reality, you lose, 20% of them.
Mm-hmm.
You can't sell another 20% of them. You give away another 10% of them, and by the end of it, you're actually down to a couple $100.
It's true, and I know with zoanthus especially, like you cut them down to one specific polyp, and then your mother colonies then for some dumb reason nukes, and now you wanted that. I call it getting stingy. I'm like, oh, I got stingy on that acan, and I tried to cut it down for a polyp. It never works out. It's always just you want to make sure that the coral is actually healthy if you're going to be cutting it.
That's that brings up another good point too. Is making it worth the buyer's while. Like, do I really want one head of candy cane? Do I really want one Duncan head and charge me $15 for it? No, especially corals that regenerate and grow fast. Duncans, you can get heads on that thing within months. Sure. And so why not cut a piece off that's got 4 or 5 baby heads and 1 big giant or 2 big giant heads and charge the same $15 for it?
Right.
I mean, if you wait long enough, you could eventually chop it. You could get $15 a head for it, but you're actually you're probably building better repeat clientele, or people who want to buy corals from you.
And they're healthier.
If you make it, and then they have less chance of dying because you've grown them out to a point where they're reproducing themselves.
Yep.
Now it's not on the person who bought it to keep it alive just enough to just start recovering and get the recovery phase done on your time.
Yeah.
So then sell it to somebody.
Yeah, it's better. It's just best practice.
Yeah.
It just builds trust.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it works. And it also seems like certain corals, like certain acros that are beautiful, like the reason why I think a lot of companies, myself included, have to cut them down small is because that's all that we have is that teeny bit. And so if you, like for me, the first 6 frags I always go to bank.
Yeah.
And then we have 6. So then 6 become 12. So, even if you spend extra money on a certain piece that you really love, make sure you save a few banks.
Yeah.
Even if it's in your own tanks and you can put them in separate ones because you just never know.
Yeah, that's true.
And that sucks because, there's so many corals that we just don't see ever again. Yeah. And so fragging it not just for money, but also fragging it to keep it in the
posterity.
hobby.
Yeah.
Like there's a blue millie that I would die to get back because I used to have it like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Probably 16 years ago, but and I can't find it anywhere.
Oh.
And I just kept cutting it to finally my mother colony was this big, and then because that was what you did.
Ah, man. Actually, another point on that one. I used to make it a point to not buy any frags that were freshly glued.
That's fair.
If it wasn't already starting to, and then it sticks, mostly. But if it already wasn't starting to encrust over the glue, or if it was fresh cut and you can see the bone white and there wasn't like algae or brown cover on the side of the acan, or if you could see fresh cuts on some of the torches, I wouldn't buy them. I'd wait. I'd be like, yeah, keep that one. Somebody might buy it, but because I want that thing to survive, I want the chances of survival much higher. And then it kind of bled, that philosophy of my own buying bled into, when I was selling frags to people is, let it heal on your time, let it recover on your time. So I would say, I'd be like, that would be a selling point to somebody is, one, you're getting more for what you're paying for,
yeah, exactly.
And 2, like, the stuff is already healed. Look, and you can point it out as a selling point for your corals that you're selling. Like, hey, look, this thing's already, encrusting back over the glue and over onto the plug. I'm only charging you 15, 20 bucks for this thing. So, trust that my corals are good. Another thing is, we kind of already mentioned advertising, but putting yourself out there on Craigslist, Facebook, and having just an ongoing ad out there. It didn't work for me because I had to travel to where all the people were buying corals, so it's like a once every month or so trip. If I lived in the city that had people, I would leave like an advertisement up. But we would advertise like a week before, like, hey, we're coming this weekend. Here's what we got. PM us your, what you want. Here's all of the list of corals we have. Here's the prices. There's no guessing. You're going to get this coral for this price. Here's some pictures of what they are, and then we just leave that out there for a week. Mm-hmm. We'd close up shop. We'd send out, all right, this is the last call, and then close down everything and start coordinating meeting with people. And we also had people travel, come to our place. And like, hey, let me come down to your basement. I heard you were slinging corals. Like, yeah, I was slinging corals. There's blue light in my basement. So
well, then that's when the cops always come in. I always knew when I get a new cop in town because they'd come in and have to do an energy audit. I'm like, just come in and look at it all.
In your store?
No, when I had it in my old garage, because you'd see like your neighbors are here, and then mine would be like up here.
Oh yeah.
And so the police officers would be, hi, I'd like to introduce. I'm like, I know why you're here. Just walk in. They're like, whoa, this is crazy. It's like, yeah.
Oh, and then when they see what you're doing, it's like really cool.
Yeah, and then now we're buddies. But there was a comment here and a couple mistakes that some people make for fragging that we could talk about too. I know
Dev Android, who was just here a few weeks ago. Dev, how are you? Please share a couple top mistakes you see us amateurs frequently make.
And I think you touched on a couple of them. I know for sure we always value our stuff more, I think, than what
it actually.
We've like my dog is, or my son, or my thing is the smartest and the best, So just being honest with, what I mean, like what would you pay for it, or what are you in it for? If you're in it just to make your pizza money, then just don't get greedy. That's just what it is. And also, the one thing I love that you talked about too is like, if you get into it to like, I need to push it, I need it to go, and it's not looking healthy, I'm going to sell it right away.
Yeah.
It'll be a one and done thing. If you're looking to get into it, and that's how we did it, is to build a reputation.
Yeah.
You hold on to it. If it dies on your hands, that sucks, yes, but it's worse I'm not in it for the quick relationship. You're in it for the long haul.
If you burn one person, or the first person, or the second person, you're probably
done.
That's gonna trickle out.
And now it's even worse because you have everybody can.
Yeah, don't buy corals from him.
He
sells you a sliver of a fingernail for 20 bucks.
Things happen. So if you notice, like you have a pest, or absolutely do not sell that, or try to push it out and be like, well, at least I got to get what I can get out of this. That is awful.
It's almost like making that phone call to the people that you might have hung out with, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, God.
Like, I got to call everybody I sold this coral to. All right, guys, red bugs. Watch for red bugs.
And then denying it, too, is just,
even worse.
Just even worse, because everybody knows.
Yeah.
And so knowing, making sure if you're going to get into this and you actually want to do it for some money, making sure that your stuff is healthy, number one. That's why we, now when people bring things in, we have to sometimes be the bearer of bad news. They're like, you can tell when people are like, oh, I have all of these things and you should have them. And then you look at them and like, well, why are none of them encrusted? And then I look and I see acro-eating flatworms, eggs, and then they don't want to hear that. And then they're like, you're mean. And it's like, no, I'm not being mean. I want you to be successful.
Well, that brings me to the one